In 1971, an event took place that stunned the world, not just for its extravagance, but for the sheer audacity of its claim. The Shah of Iran, in a spectacle of grandeur amid the ruins of Persepolis, hosted what many historians still call the most expensive party in human history. Lavish tents, gourmet banquets, glittering lights in the desert. The world's royalty and elite gathered to honor what the Shah declared: 2,500 years of continuous Persian civilization. And as extraordinary as that number sounds, it wasn't just a boast. It was a testament to one of history's greatest survival stories. Today, we journey into the heart of that survival. How did Persian culture not only endure the tidal waves of conquest, colonization, and catastrophe, but thrive in their wake? How did a language, threatened with extinction, become the lingua franca of empires? Why are festivals older than Christianity still celebrated by millions? And what is it about ancient Persian poetry that can move a modern teenager to tears? These are the stories that reveal how a civilization can outlast empires, outwit invaders, and keep its soul burning bright across centuries. Let's begin with a survival that should have been impossible. In the year 651 CE, the Sasanian Empire fell to the advancing Arab armies. The Zoroastrian fire temples were extinguished, Persian palaces crumbled, and a new faith swept the land. Arabic replaced Persian as the language of administration, law, and learning. For over 2 centuries, the rulers of Persia did everything in their power to overwrite Persian identity, banning its script, its poetry, its customs. The Persian language, rooted in millennia of history, seemed doomed to fade into oblivion. But against all odds, Persian did not die. In fact, it transformed and rose to become a language of power across 3 continents. This is where the story takes an astonishing turn. By the 10th century, the language had evolved into what we call New Persian, remarkably similar to the Persian spoken in Iran today. Far from being erased, Persian became the court language of the Mughal Empire in India, the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, and the great kingdoms of Central Asia. Across hundreds of years and thousands of miles, Persian became the language of poetry, scholarship, and government, a status no conqueror could have predicted. How did this happen? The secret weapon was poetry. Persian poets, determined to preserve their heritage, deliberately shunned Arabic loanwords and wrote in pure Persian. Ferdowsi, the legendary author of the Shahnameh, or Book of Kings, spent 30 years weaving together the ancient myths and legends of Persia into over 50,000 rhyming couplets. His masterpiece became a cultural Bible, recited in times of joy and sorrow, copied by hand in the darkest days, cherished by generations. Ferdowsi didn't just preserve a language, he preserved a world view, a sense of identity, and a connection to a glorious past. Here's what will truly surprise you. If you could time travel back to the year 1000 and speak with a Persian of that era, you'd understand about 60% of their words. The structure, the vocabulary, the heartbeat of the language remain almost unchanged. Unlike English, where the gap between Old English and today's speech is often insurmountable. This linguistic continuity has created a time capsule. Iranian teenagers, even now, can read 800-year-old love poems without translation. They don't just learn their language, they inherit a living link to their ancestors, a bridge built of words and dreams. But survival was never just about language. The Persians had another trick up their sleeve, one that was even more audacious. Every spring, as the earth tilts back toward the sun, over 300 million people across 12 countries gather to celebrate Nowruz, the Persian New Year. What's remarkable isn't just the scale of the celebration, it's the astonishing continuity. The rituals, the songs, the foods, even the prayers are almost exactly as they were 2,500 years ago when Zoroastrian priests kindled sacred fires to welcome the light. Ancient Persians believed that jumping over fire would purge them of the previous year's misfortunes, a ritual that astonishingly persists today. On the eve of Nowruz, Iranians leap over flames, chanting words that have echoed through the ages. The festival's centerpiece, the Haft Sin table, is meticulously set with 7 items, each representing Zoroastrian concepts of purity, rebirth, and fortune. Even as the official religion of the land shifted from Zoroastrianism to Islam, the festival endured, camouflaged as a seasonal celebration, stripped of overt religious meaning, but rich in ancient symbolism. This cultural camouflage was a stroke of genius. Outwardly, Persians embraced Islam, building grand mosques and reciting Arabic prayers. Inwardly, they continued to practice ancient customs, reframed as folk tradition. The fire jumping of Nowruz became a harmless spring ritual, the elaborate table settings, a family tradition rather than a religious rite. Even the veneration of poets like Hafez and Sa'di took on a quasi-religious intensity, their tombs attracting pilgrims seeking wisdom and solace. The result? A survival strategy that allowed Persian culture to slip past the censors of conquerors. UNESCO has recognized Nowruz as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity, calling it one of the world's oldest surviving celebrations. From New York to Uzbekistan, from Toronto to Tehran, families gather every March to perform rituals their ancestors once practiced beneath the shadow of Persepolis. The flame of Nowruz has survived the rise and fall of empires, religions, and ideologies, a living link to the world's most ancient celebrations. But perhaps the most astonishing tool of survival was poetry, a force so powerful it became the heartbeat of the nation. In Iran today, memorizing the poetry of Hafez, Rumi, and Sa'di is not just a matter of pride, it's a rite of passage. Children recite verses with the same reverence others reserve for scripture. In the darkest days of Mongol invasions, when libraries burned and cities crumbled, Persians turned to poetry as their shield and sanctuary. The verses of Hafez, written in the 14th century, became a spiritual lifeline, a source of hope, defiance, and resilience. Hafez is to Iran what Shakespeare, Gandhi, and the Prophet are to the English-speaking world combined. His poetry is chanted at weddings, read at funerals, consulted for guidance in times of uncertainty. The tradition of bibliomancy, opening a book of Hafez's poems at random to divine one's fate, remains widespread, blurring the line between literature and spirituality. But Persian poetry did more than preserve a sense of identity. It became the universal language of complex human emotion. Rumi, born in the Persian-speaking world, is today the best-selling poet in America. His verses, rich with longing, mysticism, and humor, have been translated into every major language. Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat, with its enigmatic meditations on fate and desire, influenced European Renaissance writers and philosophers. The genius of Persian poetry lies in its ability to encode resistance and hope in metaphor. During times of political repression, protesters have chanted verses from Hafez, ostensibly about love or wine, but understood by all as calls for freedom and justice. Poetry, in the Persian tradition, is never just words on a page. It is a living, breathing force for survival, a weapon, a salve, a secret handshake between generations. Today, in a world dominated by rapid change and digital distraction, one might expect such ancient traditions to wither. But the reality is more surprising. Iranian Gen Z, the children of a tech-savvy globalized era, are turning to their roots in unexpected ways. Instagram feeds overflow with selfies captioned by Hafez's verses. TikTok videos teach the elegant strokes of Persian calligraphy. Traditional music is remixed with electronic beats, creating new forms that are both ancient and modern. Artists, poets, and musicians face the same challenge their ancestors did: how to innovate without losing themselves. They blend miniature painting techniques with contemporary political themes. They use the language of Ferdowsi and Rumi to comment on everything from love to revolution. The result is a culture that is both fiercely traditional and creatively experimental. But perhaps the greatest preservation force of all lies outside Iran's borders. The Iranian diaspora, over 4 million strong, has become the ultimate cultural time capsule. In cities like Los Angeles, London, and Toronto, Nowruz celebrations are often more elaborate than those in Tehran. Persian language schools in the diaspora teach classical poetry to children who have never set foot in Iran. Exile for many has become a way to hold tight to traditions that might otherwise erode in the homeland. In this way, Persian culture is becoming both more global and more preserved. As it spreads across continents, it adapts to new realities, yet it also clings to the core elements that have defined it for millennia. Nowruz feasts in California might feature tacos alongside traditional sabzi polo. Poetry readings in London might be set to jazz. But the essence endures. So what does 2,500 years of survival teach us? That true culture is not a static relic, preserved under glass. It is a living organism, growing, adapting, mutating, yet always recognizable in its DNA. Persian civilization survived not by resisting change, but by absorbing and transforming it. Its language was nearly erased, yet it became a beacon for empires. Its festivals were nearly banned, yet they became the heartbeat of spring for millions. Its poetry faced oblivion, yet it became the voice of the voiceless, from medieval courts to modern protests. And here's the final twist. Persian culture is not limited to Iran, or even to those who claim Persian ancestry. Its poetry, its music, its festivals have become part of the world's collective heritage. While governments rise and fall, while borders are redrawn and ideologies fade, the things that matter most endure. The words, the celebrations, the dreams that make us human. If this journey into the world's most resilient civilization has inspired you, take a moment to reflect. What ancient tradition from your own culture still shapes your life? How do you, in your own way, carry the torch of your ancestors into the future? Because the story of Persian survival is not just about Iran, it's about all of us. The universal human drive to preserve what matters most, to adapt without losing ourselves, and to celebrate the timeless beauty that connects us across generations and continents. Keep exploring. The world's oldest stories still have much to teach us.